Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, U.S. Immigration News. We hope you're doing great. USCIS unveils changes to naturalization test in multi-step overhaul of citizenship standards. Recent developments in U.S. immigration policy and enforcement reflect a sweeping shift in citizenship standards, legal scrutiny, and deportation practices, sparking debate over fairness, civil rights, and the human cost of these measures. If you are interested in this topic, please pay attention and watch the video through to the end to get all the information. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell for an upcoming video. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has announced the rollout of a new, more rigorous version of the naturalization civics test. It will apply to those applicants who file their naturalization forms 30 days after September 18th, which is the date of publication of the notice in the Federal Register. The 2025 Naturalization Civics Test will once again feature 20 civics questions drawn from a pool of 128, with applicants required to correctly answer 12 to pass. This is a significant expansion from the older version, which relied on 10 questions from a 100-question pool and required 6 correct answers. A key procedural change has been introduced. Unlike the earlier version, officers will stop the test once the applicant either passes 12 correct answers or fails 9 incorrect answers. Previously, all 20 questions were asked regardless of performance. USS emphasized that the new test ensures a broader and more meaningful assessment of applicants' knowledge of American history, government, and civic principles, while addressing earlier concerns about interview time and fairness. Older applicants, those 65 years or older, with at least 20 years as a lawful permanent resident, aka green card holder, will continue to face a shorter exam of 10 questions from a special 20-question set, needing 6 correct responses to qualify. Naturalization citizenship is a privilege that allows foreign nationals to become fully vested members of American society, with important rights and responsibilities that all citizens should exercise and respect, reiterates USCIS. American citizenship is the most sacred citizenship in the world and should only be reserved for aliens, foreign nationals, who will fully embrace our values and principles as a nation. By ensuring only those aliens who meet all eligibility requirements, including the ability to read, write, and speak English and understand U.S. government and civics, are able to naturalize, the American people can be assured that those joining us as fellow citizens are fully assimilated and will contribute to America's greatness. These critical changes are the first of many, said Matthew Trugesser, spokesperson at USCIS. During the past few months, in various public forums, Joseph Edlow, Director USCIS, has spoken about the need for a change in the citizenship test, terming the current test too easy. In fiscal 2024, year ended September 30th, 8.18 lakh foreign nationals acquired U.S. citizenship. Mexicans led with as many as 1.07 lakh becoming American citizens, 13% of the total. This was followed by Indians, with a little over 49,000, or 6% of the total, acquiring U.S. citizenship. The trend was similar to earlier years. Indians are the second largest contingent to acquire U.S. citizenship. USCIS states that it will update study guides and retain online access to materials for both the earlier format and the 2025 tests, to help applicants prepare based on when they file their applications. TOI has covered the ongoing policy announcements for those aspiring to become U.S. citizens. For instance, USCIS officials will take a holistic approach to assessing good moral character, moving away from a non-subjective checklist of disqualifying offenses. The agency has also resumed neighborhood investigations, which cover the vicinity of an applicant's place of residence and employment, and include at least a 5-year period prior to the filing of a naturalization application. Other recent policies include clarifying that unlawfully voting, unlawfully registering to vote, and making false claims to U.S. citizenship disqualify foreign nationals from becoming U.S. citizens. The updated exam and other policy changes follow President Trump's January 2025 executive order on immigrant assimilation and national security, which call for stronger measures to promote a unified American identity. Indian green card holder detained in U.S. for decades-old minor offense. Paramjit Singh, a U.S. green card holder originally from India, has been in federal custody for more than 6 weeks after immigration agents detained him at Chicago's O'Hare Airport on July 30th. Singh, who has lived in the United States for over 3 decades and runs a business in Fort Wayne, Indiana, had just returned from a trip to India when he was stopped. His attorney, Luis Angeles, told Newsweek the detention has been nothing short of horrific for Singh and his family. Singh, who suffers from a brain tumor and a heart condition, was reportedly held at the airport for 5 days before his health deteriorated, and he was taken to an emergency room. His family learned of the hospital visit only after receiving a medical bill, Angeles said. According to Newsweek, Singh's detention stems from a decades-old minor offense involving the use of a pay phone without payment, a matter for which he had already served a sentence. Angeles argued that the Department of Homeland Security has prolonged Singh's custody despite a bond ruling in his favor, calling the tactics legal yet arguably unethical. The case highlights broader concerns raised by immigration advocates about President Donald Trump's immigration policies. Trump campaigned on mass deportations, vowing to target undocumented immigrants with violent criminal records. But critics say enforcement has also swept up lawful residents with old or minor infractions. Singh's brother, Chiranjit Singh, told local station WPTA, "We're just trying to post a bond. We're just trying to speak to someone, trying to communicate with someone. We're lost." A Customs and Border Protection spokesperson previously told Newsweek, "A green card is a privilege, not a right, and under our nation's laws, our government has the authority to revoke a green card if our laws are broken and abused." Lawful permanent residents presenting at a U.S. port of entry with previous criminal convictions may be subject to mandatory detention and or may be asked to provide additional documentation to be set up for an immigration hearing. Singh's lawyer has filed an appeal and is seeking immediate federal court review. Mahmoud Khalil could be deported to Syria or Algeria. What to know? An immigration judge in Louisiana has ruled that Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil, a lawful permanent resident of the United States, must be deported to either Syria or Algeria. The decision comes after the court found he failed to disclose certain information on his green card application. Khalil, who has long been an outspoken pro-Palestinian advocate, now faces an uncertain future as his legal team prepares an appeal. A family at risk amid rapid deportation proceedings. Khalil, who resides in New York with his American wife and newborn son, has argued that his removal would devastate his family and place him in grave danger abroad. His lawyers contend that deportation to Syria could expose him to severe risks, while Algeria is a country with which he has little to no connection. How a student activist became a target. Originally from Syria, Khalil pursued graduate studies at Columbia University before becoming active in pro-Palestinian causes. His public speeches and organizational work place him on the radar of U.S. authorities, particularly under the Trump administration, which emphasized immigration enforcement as both a domestic security and foreign policy tool. The national security justification. Initially, the government saw Khalil's removal under a little-used section of immigration law that permits deportation if the Secretary of State determines that a non-citizen's presence threatens a compelling foreign policy interest. Secretary of State Marco Rubio invoked this provision earlier this year, citing Khalil's activism. Critics saw this as an attempt to criminalize dissent and chill free speech among immigrant communities. However, in June, U.S. District Judge Michael Farbiarz blocked this effort, ruling that Khalil was likely to succeed on constitutional grounds. The judge determined that punishing someone for their political speech violated the First Amendment and ordered Khalil's release, noting that he posed no flight risk or threat to public safety. A shift in strategy, paperwork violations. After their initial strategy collapsed, government attorneys pivoted to a more traditional but equally contentious approach, alleging that Khalil misrepresented employment and organizational affiliations on his green card application. Immigration Judge Jamie Comins accepted this argument in September, ordering Khalil's removal to Syria or Algeria. Khalil's legal team strongly disputed the ruling, saying it reflected an effort to use technicalities to achieve the same outcome. Deportation after the national security justification was struck down. Civil liberties groups entered the fight. The American Civil Liberties Union and the Center for Constitutional Rights are leading Khalil's defense, framing the case as a broader test of government overreach. In a recent filing, they argued that the deportation order threatens not just Khalil's liberty and family, but also the constitutional protections of all lawful permanent residents. Concerns about executive power. Khalil's case comes amid growing scrutiny of the Trump administration's reliance on obscure immigration statutes. A report from the New York City Bar Association highlighted how rarely used provisions, such as the Alien Enemies Act and foreign policy-based deportation powers, are being invoked to sideline traditional due process. Assistant Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, however, defended the administration's approach, calling judicial interventions like Judge Farbiar's ruling an obstacle to national security. Voices from the courtroom and beyond. Judge Farbiar's himself noted the troubling nature of the proceedings. There is at least something to the underlying claim that there is an effort to use immigration proceedings here to punish the petitioner here, and of course that would be unconstitutional. For his part, Khalil issued a statement after the deportation order, denouncing what he called a kangaroo immigration court designed to silence his activism. It is no surprise that the Trump administration continues to retaliate against me for my exercise of free speech, he said, accusing officials of weaponizing immigration law for political ends. The uphill battle ahead. Khalil's lawyers are now preparing to appeal Judge Coleman's decision to the Board of Immigration Appeals. Yet they admit the odds are slim. Statistics show that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which oversees cases from Louisiana, almost never grants stays of removal for non-citizens. If the BIA affirms a ruling, Khalil will lose his permanent resident status and face imminent deportation, a case that could reshape immigration law. The Khalil case sits at a fraught intersection of politics, security, and human rights. To some, it exemplifies the Trump administration's determination to use every legal tool available to silence dissenters. To others, it reflects a legitimate enforcement of immigration rules. Teen to self-deport after ICE detained him weeks before graduation. An 18-year-old student has chosen to voluntarily leave the United States following detention by immigration authorities, just weeks before his high school graduation ceremony. The case has drawn attention from advocates, educators, and critics of federal immigration policy, highlighting the personal toll of ongoing enforcement measures. Political backdrop of the deportation debate. Immigration enforcement has intensified under President Donald Trump, who campaigned on removing undocumented immigrants, particularly those with criminal convictions. While his administration has emphasized public safety, critics argue the policies have resulted in the removal or detention of individuals with minor infractions or no records at all. This widening scope has stirred controversy and fueled public debate about the fairness and effectiveness of federal immigration measures. The journey of Alvaro Velazquez. Alvaro Velazquez, originally from Guatemala, entered the United States at the age of 16. Following the death of his mother and lack of contact with his father, he settled on Long Island with a guardian. His time in the U.S. was marked by stability and academic success, as he prepared to graduate from Roosevelt High School in June. However, before achieving this milestone, Velazquez was detained by immigration and customs enforcement agents and later transferred to a facility in Texas. Court appearance and self-deportation choice. Despite not having any criminal record, Velazquez faced immigration proceedings. During a virtual hearing, he opted for self-deportation, a decision his attorney described as stemming from deep frustration with his detention. Velazquez had previously sought relief through the courts and was granted deferred action. His arrest, which occurred while returning from a grocery trip with his guardian, came as a shock to those who knew him. Concerns raised by legal counsel. Attorney Baber has voiced serious concerns about Velazquez's future in Guatemala, where he has no immediate family to support him. She noted that his decision was driven more by emotional exhaustion and a desire to leave detention than by careful consideration of the challenges awaiting him in his home country. She fears he may not fully understand the difficulties of returning to a country where he has limited ties or support networks. Government response to the case. Federal officials have defended the detention and removal proceedings. In a statement, Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin emphasized that Velazquez entered the country unlawfully and was released under prior policies before being rearrested. She highlighted the administration's commitment to restoring strict enforcement and reversing earlier practices that allowed migrants to remain in the U.S. while awaiting hearings. Teachers and community members speak out. At Roosevelt High School, Velazquez was remembered fondly by educators. Social studies teacher Jessica Harrison described him as an exemplary student, praising his character and positive presence in the classroom. Community members expressed disappointment that his educational journey would end abruptly, underscoring the human impact of immigration enforcement actions that disrupt young people's lives and futures. From stricter naturalization tests to controversial detentions and deportation orders, these cases highlight the growing tension between national security priorities and immigrant protections, underscoring the urgent need for balanced reforms. That is all for today in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully, the information is useful to you. See you later in the next video. Till then, take care.
USCIS unveils changes to naturalization test in multi-step overhaul of citizenship standard. The US Citizenship and Immigration Services has introduced a stricter naturalization civics test, effective for applicants starting 30 days after September 18, 2025. The updated exam will feature 20 questions from a pool of 128 requiring at least 12 correct answers compared to the previous 10 questions puzzle. Immigration officers will stop testing once applicants clearly pass or fail, while seniors with 20 years of residency and age 65 or older will continue with a simplified portion. USCIS said the change enhances knowledge of US history, government, and civic values, aligning with the President Trump's assimilation and national security agenda. Updates to study material, moral character assessment, and enforcement checks are also underway. At the same time, recent cases highlight tensions between enforcement and civil liberties. Palestinian activist Mohammed Khalil faces deportation for alleged misrepresentation, raising free speech and humanitarian concern, while Guatemalan student Alvaro Velasquez self-deported after detention, reflecting the human cost of intensified immigration enforcement.